Back at the 1982 World Cup, Prince Fahad of Kuwait forced the referee to cancel a goal against France. Yes, that actually happened. France were cruising at 3-1 with about 10 minutes to go, and when Alain Giresse strode through to make it 4, the Kuwait defenders just stopped running because they had heard a whistle. Probably worse, the whistle had come from someone in the crowd, not the referee. So the goal stood, or so we thought, until Sheikh Fahad Al-Ahmad Al-Sabah, who happened to be an actual member of the royal family, marched onto the pitch and threatened to pull his entire team off unless the goal was chalked off. And unbelievably, the referee disallowed the goal. France still went and scored a legitimate 4th goal to win 4-1. But that referee never officiated a World Cup match again. Believe it or not, this is not the most bizarre thing to happen at the World Cup. Let's start at number 10. This one is a mystery that has never been truly solved. Ronaldo, the original Brazilian one, had been unstoppable at the 1998 World Cup, scoring 4 goals to fire Brazil into the final against France. Then just hours before kickoff, he suffered some kind of seizure at the team hotel. His name was pulled from the team sheet and replaced by Edmundo, only for Ronaldo to be reinstated at the last minute after the doctors found nothing concrete and he insisted he was fine. Well, he very clearly was not fine. Ronaldo ghosted through the final like a ghost as Brazil were torn apart 3-0 by Zidane and France. The conspiracy theory started flying almost immediately, with some pointing fingers at sponsors Nike for allegedly pressuring Brazil to play their star, and others whispering that the whole game had been handed to France for political reasons. To this day, nobody can fully explain what happened to Ronaldo that night.
Did you blame yourself for Brazil losing?
No. Fue muy difícil, pero nunca me sentí culpado.
No.
Yo tuve un acto de coraje muy grande porque yo creo que cualquier otra persona no iría a jugar este partido. No quería salir de una final con miedo de que me pasara algo. No tenía esta posibilidad, ¿no? Antes perder jugando mal que perder como un cobarde.
At number 9, we have a refereeing blunder. So absurd it sounds made up. During a 2006 group game between Croatia and Australia, English referee Graham Poll booked Croatia's Josip Šimunić in the first half. Fair enough. Then deep in stoppage time, he booked Šimunić again, and instead of producing the red card, he just let him carry on playing. The reason is the best part. Graham Poll had written Šimunić's number down in the Australian column by mistake, because Šimunić had grown up in Australia and spoke with a thick Aussie accent. So Graham Poll's big brain had fired him under the wrong team. You can't make this stuff up. Later on, Šimunić finally earned a 3rd yellow for dissent, at which point Poll finally remembered to show him the red card. 3 yellows for one man in one match, a record that for obvious reasons is never going to be broken, and one that quietly ended Poll's international career. At number 8 is the moments that changed the laws of the game. England were 2-1 down to Germany in the 2010 round of 16 when Frank Lampard smashed a shot off the underside of the crossbar. It bounced down a clear yard or so over the line and spun back out. Everyone saw it, the English players saw it, the German players definitely saw it, and the millions watching at home saw it. The only people on earth who didn't see it were the match officials, who waved play on and ruled no goal. And just like that, England completely fell apart and lost the match 4-1. There's a delicious irony here with the ghost goal that helped England win the World Cup back in 1966. But in any case, this was the incident that finally shamed FIFA to introduce goal line technology. At number 7, we have an incident that broke the hearts of an entire continent. The 2010 World Cup was a brilliant tournament, but for African fans, it ended in agony. Ghana, the last African side standing, and they were level with Uruguay deep into extra time of their quarterfinal. Then, during a goal-mouth scramble, the ball fell to Dominic Adia, who headed the ball towards the net. But check this out, out of nowhere, Luis Suarez, standing on the line, simply punched the ball away with both hands like a volleyball player. He was sent off, but the resulting penalty from Asamoah Gyan smashed against the crossbar and Uruguay went on to win the shootout. If not for Suarez, Ghana would have been the first African team ever to reach a World Cup semi-final. Of course, it didn't help matters that the shameless Suarez later said that his handball was the real hand of God and that he had pulled off the save of the tournament. At number 6, we have the fall of a legend. The 1994 World Cup was Diego Maradona's last dance, and it ended in the most unexpected way. After a rough few years, Maradona was able to get himself into shape for one last big tournament. He even capped a win over Greece with a thunderous goal and that wide, bug-eyed scream into the camera. That turned out to be his final goal for Argentina. After the next game, a 2-1 win over Nigeria, Maradona was led away by a nurse for a routine doping test. Surprise, surprise, he failed the test and popped positive for ephedrine. The great Maradona was thrown out of the tournament on the spot. One of the greatest players who ever lived left his final World Cup in disgrace. Number 5 still doesn't feel real even now. Brazil reached the 2014 semi-final on home soil. An entire nation convinced this was their year, and all that stood in the way was Germany. What followed was the most shocking collapse in the sport's history. Germany scored in the 11th minute, and then the roof caved in. They scored in the 23rd, the 24th, the 26th, and the 29th. Inside half an hour, Brazil were 5-0 down in their own stadium, and the only sound left in the place was the German fans. The game finished 7-1 with a late Oscar goal that somehow made things feel worse. Grown men and women were weeping in the stands long before the final whistle. Players were in tears on the pitch, and the whole country was in mourning. The Mineirazo, as they call it, is one of the most embarrassing moments in Brazilian football history. At number 4 is a game so violent it was named after an actual battle, the Battle of Nuremberg. Portugal against the Netherlands in the 2006 round of 16 was supposed to be a meeting of two proud footballing nations, but instead it turned into a kung fu movie. The first warning came inside 2 minutes when Mark van Bommel fouled Cristiano Ronaldo, and from there it just kept getting worse. Luis Figo headbutted Van Bommel and somehow only got a yellow. 4 players were eventually sent off, and by the end, referee Valentin Ivanov had shown 16 yellow cards and 4 reds, both World Cup records. Even FIFA president Sepp Blatter joked that Ivanov should have shown himself a yellow card for his own performance. It was no surprise when he was dropped from the rest of the tournament. The thing nobody remembers is that Portugal actually won the match 1-0, which tells you everything about how the chaos overshadowed the football. Number 3 brings us back to Luis Suarez, the greatest villain in football history. Luis Suarez had already taken a bite at Otman Bakar's shoulder while at Ajax in 2010, and then taken a bite out of Branislav Ivanovic's arm at Liverpool in 2013. So when he sank his teeth into Giorgio Chiellini's shoulder during a 2014 group game against Italy, it was technically a hat-trick. Chiellini yanked his shirt down to show the referee the teeth marks, but the official had missed it entirely, and Uruguay scored in the very next attack while Suarez celebrated like a man without a care in the world. FIFA handed him a 9-game international ban and a 4-month suspension from all football. 3 opponents, 3 bites, and not a hint of regret. At some point, you just have to accept that the man enjoyed biting people. At number 2 is perhaps the most debated goal ever scored. The 1986 quarter-final between Argentina and England came just 4 years after the Falklands War, so the atmosphere was loaded with far more than football. Then in the 51st minute, a ball was hooked into the England's box and Maradona challenged goalkeeper Peter Shilton in the air despite being shorter by 8 inches. Shilton went up to punch it, but so did Maradona, sticking out his left fist and knocking the ball over the keeper and into the net. To everyone's surprise, the referee gave the goal. 4 minutes later, everything was forgotten because Maradona scored what's probably the greatest goal of all time, gliding past 5 England players from inside his own half. When the press asked Maradona how the first goal went in, he just smiled and said it was scored a little by the head of Maradona and a little by the hand of God. And finally, at number 1, the moment that ended a god's career, Zinedine Zidane went into the 2006 World Cup ready for one last dance, dragging France all the way to the final against Italy. He even opened the scoring with an outrageous Panenka penalty that kissed the underside of the bar and dropped in. Marco Materazzi equalized soon after, and the two of them stayed locked together for the rest of the night right up until extra time. And then out of nowhere, Materazzi said something about Zidane's sister. Zidane walked a few steps ahead, paused, turned around and drove his forehead straight into Materazzi's chest. Straight red, the greatest player of his generation marched off down the tunnel, walking right past the World Cup trophy in the final game of his entire career. France lost on penalties, and Zidane has said he can't bring himself to apologize for it even while admitting he regrets it. The perfect ending ruined in a single very human moment. Which moment deserves to be on this list? Let us know in the comments.